Yeah, sorry, welcome to Verbal Pick Radio, where we give you a verbal image of life, and we are everyday people. And as usual, I got my partner, man, Brother Low Key in the building. What's up, Brother Low Key?
What's going on, Brother Carl Black?
Oh, man, definitely, man. You know how we do it. You know, we want to get into the subject of common ground because in this day and time, I feel we should build on a common ground between us as a people, whether you from Haiti, Dominican, you know what I mean, whether you from South Carolina, whether you from Houston, New York, whether you from England, whether you supporting Colin Kaepernick, whether you not, whatever, but it's a common denominator, you know what I mean, between us as a people that we share. And I just want to say this real quick, is that I seen elderly people, and when I say elderly, like grandparents who knew what route to get when there was an ailment or illness within the family. Right. They knew where to go to. They knew what plant, what did what, and it was universal because I would go to Louisiana and my grandmother knew that. Right. I go to my other grandmother's house and be there. She knew it. I hear my other friends who might have been from Ohio, they knew it. Right. In those times. You know, it was a common ground, but it's like, how did we lose that connection to where we were all on, in a sense, one accord? When I'm saying one accord, I'm talking about the mind, body, soul, spiritually. It was always about building up. Where did that get severed from? You know? And how do we put that back together? How they say Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, he broke into pieces, nobody could put him back together again. Right. In a sense, and metaphorically speaking, how can we had a fall, right? But common ground, how can we put it back together again to what it once was?
Well, I would say that, you know, what first comes to mind is when we were dealing in a certain level of competition, right, as, you know, global indigenous people. And, you know, you have one tribe, you know, that's taking over another tribe. And, you know, and now we're in this form of extreme competition, you know, classified as race. Right. You know, even in the term, literally, we're in a race, you know. And so this concept has existed, but never to this degree, this extreme degree, globally. Right. You know, so with all of the infighting and, you know, everybody, you know, looking at another school of thought as being inferior, you know, my thing is that, you know, yes, critiquing is something that can progress, you know, any particular group, school of thought, or any individual. Okay. You know, but when you get to attacking, then that's when the division comes up.
That's the problem. Right.
That's the problem.
Right. Everybody wants to protect their own, and really, essentially, what is your own? Your own is that inner guard within. Right. You're gonna protect that inner guard. You're not gonna let a man trample on your inner being. Right. Now, check this out, bro. You have the tribes that's in Africa, right? Mm-hmm. And you had the Native American tribes. Right. And Brother Farrakhan spoke on this, but showing how the beadwork and some of the artwork was similar. Mm-hmm. How some of the dances in the other Native Americans that were here and some of the dances of the African brothers in Africa, they were similar. Right. That's common ground. Right. And then I'm reading on mound builders in America, and I'm reading on some of the artifacts and writings that would be etched in stone. Right. They would find some of that over in Egypt, right? Over in here in America. Right. What's the how do we connect that common ground between all of that? Are they saying that the Native Americans is a tribe derived out of the African?
That's a fact. That's a fact. You know, I would suggest people go check out Michael Imhotep, his video on this particular subject on Dr. Boyce Watkins' YouTube channel. And in the title, it has Michael Imhotep and it has Colin Kaepernick, and he actually goes into how African people have been on this land that we now refer to, that a lot of people refer to as America, for at least 51,000 years.
Right.
He talks about DNA evidence, bone evidence, et cetera, where it's insurmountable when it comes to all of the evidence and the physical evidence that's on this particular land when it comes to African people being here before anybody else. And he also states that about 3,000 years ago, you had what we now refer to as Asians who came over here and amalgamated with African people to what, when we came up in school, in public school, they were showing an image of a lighter skinned, indigenous person. And, not including the fact that these people were originally African people.
Right.
Because that's where you find the oldest remains, bone remains, physical remains of our ancestors, going back at least millions of years.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. So that's saying that that knowledge in the school system is not being taught, but like it says, if a person won't treat you right, they're not going to teach you right. Mm-hmm. So that's why we applaud brothers like yourself, man, for giving this information to the public, because the youth need this. On that aspect of even with the Star Spangled Banner, right. That song, and in that third verse where it talks about the hirelings or slaves, they freedom. And I'm paraphrasing, but their freedom would only come through the grave, through death.
Right.
Because when he looked out of that looking glass or that telescope and saw that one American flag standing, this was in 1814, he saw that one flag standing, and he was like, okay, America is strong. Francis Scott Key, he on the ship. He had a client that he's trying to get released from the British. Mm-hmm. He sees that one flag, and he wrote the poem in 1814, and he basically saying, what he basically was saying was, with all the British because the British was out there patrolling for slave ships, they had ended their slaves. Right. They were ending slavery. Right. He's saying, with all of these bombs that we taking in, that flag is still standing there, and you're not going to free our slaves. The only way our slaves is going to get free is through the grave.
Right.
And that was the motivation behind the song.
Right.
And the reason I brought that up is, do you think that the situation with Colin Kaepernick and then Jackie Robinson, even he wasn't as Brother Malvo was stated, he wasn't on the with the flag either. But do you think that that'll open the door for us searching for common ground? Because the term common ground, to some people it may seem like something that we have to search for, and can we find it, and can it actually be achieved, versus the hardcore evidence and facts to show that no, this is actually a part of you. This is who you are. You actually denying yourself when you don't see common ground with other melanated people or your other family members that's on the planet.
Right. If you're an indigenous people on this planet, and you're not, if the first thing that comes to your mind is not common ground with another fellow indigenous, if they're African like we are, and the first thing you don't think about is common ground, then you have succumbed to non-indigenous politics and mind control.
Come on,
because
man.
When I see someone indigenous, the first thing my first thought is I'm optimistic anyway, period. That's just my mindset.
Right.
So I'm going to be moving off the common ground that this is my brother, this is my sister.
Right.
They would have to prove me wrong.
Come on.
When it comes to that,
right.
That matter. And as far as, the national anthem, definitely, you see people, coming together and they're off the common ground of they see an issue and they're standing up with our brother Colin Kaepernick, So, yeah, that's definitely something to build out for.
Yeah, right. And you're right, man. That was well said, man, and well put. We definitely, if you see your or indigenous person, and the first thing comes to your mind is enemy, I don't know where that come from, bruh. It's been places when I done been, man, actually, and I didn't even know nobody in the room, but yet before the night over with, it's a confrontation.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, are we trained, man, to automatically just not like each other in the sense that they train us that way?
That's a fact. We're in extreme competition. We're within this concept now, classified as race.
Yeah.
And so,
we fight amongst ourselves to race to get what in white supremacy. What you gonna race to get under a system of white supremacy?
I mean,
you racing to get what? If they controlling the dollars, what you racing to? You racing to do what?
I mean, perhaps it's a thing of where you have certain nations who are looking at the U.S. corporations and just European global business, and they're looking to capitalize where they fall short, where Europeans fall short as far as their global business model. And when it comes to, let's say, other nations, if they're not in alignment with these other indigenous nations, like whatever, we can name any country, but then they'll look at them as just basically, something that's going to add on to fuel there, but may not, as far as what their politics is going to be with us, is yet to be seen.
Right.
Now we can look at their politics in Africa, and we can look at those particular aspects, and go off of that. So our people, that's why first and foremost it has to start with the core. So we have to look at our loved ones and our family members, people, who we converse with and exchange energy with on a regular basis. We have to start from there. And as we acquire, as we unify, and we build on common ground and, consolidate our power, then we'll have, we'll have more leverage when it comes to international business, when it comes to other nations. But when you don't have solidarity and you're always attacking, people who look just like you, then how can you expect any other nation on the planet, any other indigenous group to take you seriously? Right.
You don't like your own, so you're not gonna like us.
Right.
Okay.
That's a fact.
That's a fact,
man. Hey, that's a fact.
Hey, that's what's up, man. Look, man, I appreciate you being on the show. And look, man, build, build, understand, grow, build, get knowledge. I mean, I'm not sure of this, but I do have a notion that back in ancient Egypt, men used to sit and build on the sciences, whether it's mathematics or astronomy or alchemy or just the universe or universal law. I believe men built and created and prophesied and could tell, okay, the future will shape this way because of look at the action of the people as a whole. So that's what this is about, and that's what this show is about. We sit and we analyze and we put mathematics and serious thought to the issues, and it's problem solving, and common ground is the theme of the day. It's time we can build on unity, common ground, and the next part 2 on common ground, we'll get into more of. I guess we have to break it down even to its more simplest form of breaking the definitions and you know what I mean? We finna go after and examine this thing, bro.
Right.
What's up, man?
And I want to add this one piece on Kemet, is that, as conscious people, we always bring up how great Kemet was. Right. And, one important aspect that made it so great as it was, is that you have all of these people that were able to come together and build on common ground. So if you want to model, your politics and, spirituality and all of these different aspects of consciousness after Kemet, then how do you just overlook that aspect, because one thing in Kemet, they didn't debate in Kemet, because they understood the concept there's no such thing as right or wrong, there's only perspective, so with that being said, there's nothing to debate about. We should just be talking about building on common ground, and if we have critique, we do that privately. We don't publicly get out there and bash each other.
Makes sense.
And we move on that particular notion.
All right, well said, man. Beautiful, definitely, bro. You right. Yeah, we don't have to air our differences all out in public to show disunity.
Right.
Come on, man. Yeah, as always, man.
All right.
Appreciate you, brother. Love you,
brother
man.
Black, man.
It's on.